A lot has happened for the Phoenix Suns this season, to say the least. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll talk about the aftermath of another back-to-back loss to championship contending teams, the latest on Kevin Durant, and where it leaves this Suns team with just 3 weeks left in the season. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Late Wednesday, early Thursday, another game day here in Phoenix. Orlando coming to town. We'll see if the Suns can get on track. If you want a recap of that show and more content every Monday through Friday in your feed, just hit follow or subscribe to support the show to get locked on to your favorite team every single day. You can also follow along at Locked On PHX Suns on Twitter to catch up on new shows, have some fun, catch whatever's going viral in Suns land over on Twitter. Aaron Edwards is joining us as he does every week. The only week this game day this week, Aaron, that doesn't have a game. And that in and of itself, I think, is part of why things feel a little chaotic right now. The Suns hit a rough part of their schedule right as the injury to Kevin Durant hit them. And so we're going to get into some of the timing of all of that. But we have to start with, I think, the big news, the thing that is on people's minds once again, which is free throws and Giannis and the history and all of that stuff. I want to tell people today's show is brought to them by Ultimate Basketball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing a basketball franchise? Well, this is the game for you. Download the game by visiting ultimatebasketballgm.com or look it up in your app store. Listeners get a free 100% boost when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, when you download the game. All right, Aaron. So I want to ask you a quick question. I think you told me you just went to the gym. This fits into what we were talking about. I see a lot of Suns fans in pain, like emotional anguish. I don't think anybody in the entire valley is in as much pain today as Torrey Craig. That man just took a beating for 2 hours last night while we all sat there and watched him.
Yeah, you could see that was kind of the plan. It was like stay in front of them and they can't not call everything kind of thing. And they didn't. They didn't call. I think that was kind of what Monty's plan or Torrey's Craig was. It's like, I'll get some offensive foul calls today. Like, as long as I stay in front of them and take the hits, I'll get some of those calls. And it's putting your body out there for a world of hurt, especially because Giannis doesn't seem to care and he flings and throws his body into you because he knows how he's officiated. He knows how he's officiated against us, especially. So I think that, if it's going to work, then I feel bad for Torrey Craig. He lost a tooth in the whole thing, but it was
lost a tooth. He went from an ankle or foot sort of thing, I think heel is what they call it, to being probable with that, to all of a sudden it looks like he couldn't move. And I was questioning if he should have been probable, but the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, no, that's just the Giannis effect. That is the ability to be rammed into for 2 hours and it going from something where you're good to play to, regret. Maybe he shouldn't have been out there. But Torrey Craig aside, I have a new segment I've been doing on these post-game shows, Aaron, that I did last night, or really probably early this morning, looking at the clock here. But I call it unreasonable speculation. And it's not always like the craziest take in the world. But the place that I came down on last night recapping that game was that it feels like the Suns have accepted defeat on this, or accepted that they're not necessarily going to be able to do anything about it. I don't know if I was just, going too hard because I was tired and mad about Cityscape parking garage giving me like an hour less sleep last night. But what do you think of that take? Does it feel like they've sort of settled into this is just reality when we play this guy? Or do you think there's a little bit more fight and adjustment that we saw last night compared to the finals or some of these other matchups?
Yeah, I think since it seems like it's obviously not going to change how he's officiated, I think if you could just stop the other dudes and just let Giannis like not run into your players, especially like this is far from now, but if we were to play in the finals, you can't handle 7 games of him running into Torrey Craig and Ayton. You just can't do that. So if anything, you just have to let the other guys try to take over and just let Giannis get his and just stop everybody else. Because Chris Middleton hurt us a lot the last time, like in the finals. That was kind of like the thing that hurt us the most, honestly. So I think that if you just let Giannis do whatever Giannis is going to do while staying sort of healthy at least, then you can just let him do that. Like he's going to get it anyway, and your players are going to feel beat up after, so might as well just let him get it.
I thought they did better in terms of trying some different stuff defensively, and I was talking a little bit post-game about how I do think this roster is a little bit better suited to throwing bodies at him than in past years. Having a Kogi, having Wainwright, guys like that, and then obviously Durant being able to be on the back line where maybe in a real series they would be able to keep Ayton on Giannis for more than just the first few minutes of the game. Ayton got into foul trouble and they went away from that. Other guys I also thought just did better at it, but they have some options. Giannis also didn't make his free throws and he shot less than 50% from the field. So I kind of agree with you. I took the poster down. If anybody noticed, I had a ceremonial detaching of the poster last night that people probably saw on YouTube if they were there. So it wasn't fun watching that game. It is really where I come down. And that's kind of the last part I want to hit on. Zooming out, getting out of Phoenix a little bit. I was really annoyed with the Luka game, the Mavs Suns game that we saw a week or so ago, Aaron, because I just feel like what Luka does, even more so than what like Harden, it was sort of this thing where he just so clearly is trolling almost with his style where he hooks you and he gets under you and then somehow it's a foul on you. So I understand why that bothered people, but at the very least, he was driving to the basket, which is like a basketball action, and he was trying to get a shot up, right? Like he was moving his arms toward the basket at the very least, even if he was doing it in a tricky way that kind of messed with the rules. I got frustrated with Luka because it's just back to the basket, get contact. The effort to even be putting a shot up is pretty minimal with him. And I think Giannis is somewhat similar. It's face up. It's not post up. It's not driving like Harden, but it's sort of another version of this where the part that bothers me, the part that I could understand being frustrated by as a player is the physicality is one thing. These decisions are hard. Was the guy in a stance? Did he have his positioning? Was he straight up? All that stuff. That's not easy to do. I don't want to like pretend like this is all the refs just not knowing what they're doing. What I get frustrated by is when there is so little effort even to be putting a shot up. And that is when it starts to feel like basketball has a problem or whatever sort of first take segment they might do about it.
Yeah, it's the spinning into a dude and just getting the contact without even thinking of shooting. Like you're playing to get the foul. And maybe that's just what it is now. Like it was always just about hooping and getting a bucket and all that. But it seems like with them, it's just playing to get fouled, which is smart. Like you want to get the team in a bonus and all that stuff. But sometimes it doesn't feel like basketball. It feels like cheating the refs for fouls. And it feels like tricking them for fouls and a free throw contest, but not even a free throw contest. It's like a one-sided free throw contest. So yeah, I get what you mean. It's like Harden was egregious, but he's always trying to get a bucket. I'll give him that. Like, every time, even though it looks disgusting and it's just Bernie Madoff basketball, like sometimes it's just egregious to the point to where it's laughable. With the other guys, it doesn't even seem like they want to be a part of the getting a shot up part.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think that it's something the Suns should let occupy their mental, focus when they're playing this team. And I always just sort of remind people, like, we have this disgusting, angry memory of that final series 2 years ago. Those games were close. And so it can feel like insurmountable. I think in game 6, there was no way the Suns were winning that game, even if the score might tell you it was close, because Giannis was just, he smelled blood, right? But like they were able to almost beat this team with a much worse roster. I think, considering Durant is still on this team. And that was the slim difference between these sides, even with Giannis getting all those calls and everything else. So they're beatable. It can feel demoralizing, but they're beatable. Last question on this. Do you think Monty's going to get a fine for what he did? Because I didn't. I was sitting there watching it in the room. I did not get the impression he went far enough to where it was going to be some sort of big cost to him. And then I saw online this morning as I was poking around, people were like, wow, this is what we need from our coach. Like, he's going out there finally, this and that. I'm like, was it? I don't really know if it was that aggressive. What do you think?
I feel like he's kind of done this before, and I don't think he got fined last time. It's almost like he said the same exact words to a T. It was just like, what are my guys supposed to do? This isn't basketball. Tell me, what do you want us to do? Like, it was kind of just that again. And he's done that before. Like, he gets like that whenever teams are just running into his players and getting calls in the other side. I think it was another game where they shot so many more free throws than us, a regular season game or somebody, and he gave like the same exact speech. He was like, what are we supposed to do? Just tell me, and I'll tell them to do that instead. Just tell me what my players are supposed to do.
I think that's the way to do it. And Book kind of said the same thing, and he was asked, like, do you feel like you're getting any sort of explanation that is able to that you're able to put into practice and not keep getting called for things? And he said no. And so I think if you're kind of framing it that way of like almost, what can I do? It's like the way that you talk to like a loved one when you don't want it to be an attack, but you also kind of are mad at them. It's like, hey, help me help you, right? It's like that type of thing. And I guess that helps you not get fined. I don't think he's going to get fined. We'll see. It'll probably be out by the time people are listening and watching this if it does happen. But I would vote. I would guess no. But let's get into Kevin Durant. We've gotten James Jones on the record talking about how they're choosing to handle this, why they're being patient, and what the severity of the injury really is. So we'll get into that and what we think about it in a second. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Ultimate Basketball GM. If you, which I know a lot of people in the comments certainly fall into this camp, feel like you could run an NBA team, manage a basketball franchise, and look, who am I to point fingers? I probably come off that way myself. You've got to try the new awesome mobile game, Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring coaches and assistants, trading and trading players, making draft picks, and navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable online, on the go, as you want and when you want. Locked On Suns listeners who try this game out, maybe you've already been playing it. Either way, 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in the game store. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on app stores. That's probasketballgm.com to find more. Use the code Locked On in the game store to get a 100% free boost to your franchise. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. Okay, Aaron, so you and I were, I think, sort of on this in terms of what we saw with this injury, what similar injuries tend to result in, all this sort of stuff. And it feels like James Jones is backing it up. Kevin Durant obviously has been diagnosed as this left ankle sprain, being reevaluated. James Jones in this interview not only said that Durant could be playing today if it were the playoffs, but he also doubled down on that timeline. So he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth a little bit, where it's like, on the one hand, we know he could play, but we're actually going to be extra cautious. It's not that those things don't necessarily line up with each other, but I guess it is strange to hear him say that outright of like, yeah, he's good to go. But yet that 2-week timeline that came out, Aaron, from Shams and other people, and the Suns went 1 week further than that. James Jones said 8 games, which would put him on track for that. That part doesn't quite add up to me. And I guess without being too panicky, we just saw 2 bad games and now I'm going to change my whole tune on it. I think you and I have been consistent that it feels like he could be playing. And at a certain point, when you look at the standings and whatnot, I do think people are going to start to wonder, well, if he can be playing, why is he not playing?
Yeah, I said all this last weekend. I always figured that he could have played if it was a more serious like stretch of games or if it was the playoffs. And I always thought that we were set on the standings that we had. Like we were either going to be 4 or 5 and they were going to be fine with that because we know what this team is with KD now. Make your open shots. They're going to get doubled and make your open shots. Like that's going to carry over whether he's here or not. So, yeah, like maybe we're going to scatter in a couple wins and he's going to get back and we go on like we hit the playoffs hot and we go on like a nice streak. But we were always just going to end up in this area and it was going to be Warriors or the Mavs are falling apart. So it was either going to be Warriors or whoever's in that spot. So yeah, I think he can just see the big picture on it and knows what his offense is going to be. He knows what the team is now. So you can kind of take your time with KD.
This is unknowable, but do you think Durant is okay with that?
I mean, he's gonna be playing a lot of minutes in the playoffs, so I think like he should be fine. Like him and Booker are gonna be on the floor at all times. We don't have to deal with any more full-on second unit Monty teams like when KD gets back.
True.
So yeah, he can probably see the writing on the wall. Like he's gonna be on the floor or Book's gonna be on the floor. And yeah, that's kind of hurting Book's minutes now that KD's not there. But I'm sure Book is fine with it. Like he's on a really good stretch and he's kind of hot right now. So he kind of wants to keep this going too. But I really just saw that we're going to be in this 4 or 5 spot. So there was really no point in rushing KD if we already know what this offense is going to look like.
Durant hasn't played a lot of basketball the past few years. And I was on his basketball reference page for something and it just jumps out to you and it's like full missed season. Then it's the COVID year where he's coming back from the Achilles and, managing that, no back-to-backs, that whole sort of thing. Comes back for the playoffs, is good to go. Amazing, whatever. Then last year, he misses some time with the same MCL sprain thing that he had this year before he got to the Suns. And then a short playoff run. They get swept out of the first round and he has a long summer. And then this year, the injury comes again. Now the second injury. He just hasn't been able to get on the court a lot. And I don't think there's any concern on my end of he's not going to be able to just hit the ground running. We already saw that. We have no doubt he can do that, but I don't know. I guess I'm in my head a little bit because there's been so much debate or discussion, Aaron, about who's controlling, who's pulling the levers on this load management stuff and injury management stuff that so many teams are doing. Even today, I think Anthony Davis, the Lakers are on a back-to-back or maybe even not a back-to-back, and AD's already been ruled out of the next game. The head coach is saying no pain, no lingering anything. It's an organizational decision that he's not going to play. And I just wonder, I have no obviously inside info. I'm not saying there's a problem. I would assume James Jones is smart enough to talk to KD and his people before just making some sort of big declaration. But it's at least on my mind that I don't know what Durant thinks. We haven't really heard from him on it.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to KD, if somebody says something online, I mean, he hasn't been really on Twitter since he became a Sun, which I'm really excited for that startup. But yeah, I think that James Jones and Monty, they're fairly close with KD. And I mean, close enough to him wanting to come here last summer, at least. So I feel like with his team and everybody like that, they would relay that to him first.
You mentioned something that I actually think I'm on a different page than you on a second ago, which is I feel like when we talked last week, I was coming down on as long as they can keep 4, I'm good with however long he's out. I think falling to 5 actually would, especially if it ends up being the Warriors, be a pretty big difference because you're talking about a team that has its biggest disadvantage or weakness right now from a big picture standpoint, aside from Andrew Wiggins not being there and some of the health stuff is they've just not been able to win road games. And we could feel that watching on Monday. They felt like a completely different squad on Monday night because the crowd is behind them and they just seem to play better for whatever reason. And this other aspect, Aaron, of Durant still has not played in front of these fans. And so the idea of going into a game 1 or even a game 3, even if the Suns did have home court advantage, but especially if the Warriors have the momentum and have that advantage, going in and having Durant make his return to that environment in the playoffs for the first time, I don't know if it matters to him. He's a killer no matter what, but that whole recipe, I do think having a home court advantage against the Warriors in the first round would matter a lot to me.
Yeah, to me, I just think like the team is the team. Like it's gonna be hoops at the end of the day, and KD knows those dudes. So I'm not really. The Warriors are good, and yeah, it's gonna be a rough series, I think. But we've had 3 really hard series in a row. We had the Lakers, we had New Orleans with Book's hamstring, and CP just having to go off, Ayton having to just play better than he's ever played. Like we had that already. So I think what's another hard first round? Like it's not really a big deal to me.
Suns have never closed out a playoff series win at home either, this iteration of the team. So yeah, I mean, look, it hasn't necessarily mattered, I guess, but so do you just not, are you the type of person that thinks home court is overrated in general? It sounds like you just don't think that's like a big deal to determine something if the teams are, pretty even, or if one team's better or whatever, it's not going to decide anything.
I watched my team get beat by 40 in a game 7 at home. So no, I don't think game 7s or a home court advantage really matters.
That's fair. That's fair. I honestly don't know what to think about the Warriors road stuff. Like, I guess it's a full season of a trend at this point, right? Like, it's not exactly a month in and we're just like, wow, they're really doing poorly. It's a season, but I also zoom out even bigger than that. And I look at, I think this is Kerr's 8th or 9th year. And that history, that sample size tells me I'm not going to sit there and tell you that if the Warriors have to go on the road, I'm just picking against them because of how poor they've looked this year. So maybe it doesn't matter. I would be trying to get 4, and I do think I do. So you also mentioned this. You said like if it was an important stretch of games, isn't this an important stretch of games? I mean, I know it was right after the injury, so maybe not like right away, but these games are sort of important if you want to win and move up the West, or at this point, probably just keep your ground. So if this isn't important, I'm not sure what is. I guess if he comes back in 3 weeks, that you get those 2 Denver games, and maybe that's kind of what they're circling, but I don't know. I feel like all these games are important. So that's part of why it surprises me that they're being so patient with it.
Yeah, I think even if they weren't rushing him and they were just treating the injury as what it was, I think he would have came back for the Orlando game. So I think he misses those big games anyway. So I think he's back tomorrow if they really, really were like, all right, you're back. Like, you don't need that much of a break, because they said the swelling went down already. So I really think, yes, he could probably play tomorrow. And if they were treating it like, let's get ready for the playoffs start in 2 weeks or next week, you need to play this Orlando game so we can like get your feet under you. I think they would do that. I just think like, since we still got all these games coming up and they are keeping it pretty close to the vest, I think that you kind of have to stretch it out a little bit.
Let's get into the bigger picture on it, because I think it's not just this injury. We've been having these types of conversations all year about how is this going to affect them? What does this timeline look like? Are they going to find chemistry with this group, or if this guy can keep it going? And so we're just in another one, but I don't know, that whole idea of it also plays into how I'm thinking with the patience of this injury, because it's just been chaotic all season. So let's dive into what they will even be feeling and looking like heading into the playoffs. First, a quick word from Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is back. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now it's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for I think I committed to the cookie dough chunk puff, because I couldn't pick between a couple of my other favorites that were going head to head. That's what I voted for. Vote for your favorite to win. Support your team, support the bar, but also, most importantly, enter into a drawing for 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of their favorite Built Bar. So if you vote, that's all you have to do to enter. You could be one of 50 lucky Locked On listeners to get a free box of Built back. Not only that, but one Locked On listener, this is the whole network. This is not just Suns fans, I'm sorry, but you can get in on it. Will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. So this is like a meal service, except it's just protein bars that are delicious. What could be better? Your breakfast is solved for a year. You got to try Built, the best protein bar ever. Covered in 100% chocolate, packed with protein, all that good stuff that you know and love. So run to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorite bar or puff. Pick up a box while you're on the website. Enter to win. You can vote every day in March, enter a ton of times, and get your pick to the victory line. Get something in your pantry. Today's show also brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Go to the awards. I actually think I saw this morning that Jokic is no longer minus money to win the MVP award. Everybody is between plus 100 and plus 200. That is a nice time to bet because you can get good money on any of those people, including Jokic, who just had a little bit of a losing streak, but probably is going to still win. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Aaron. So I think we're on a little bit of a different page on some of these things, but I look at it, and my big thing when the Durant trade happened was this, more than anything, the unprecedented, I kept calling it an experiment, because no matter how good you feel about Durant, no matter how much you and I'll never forget doing that show heading into the deadline when we were both like, yeah, they just don't have it. Like, we talked through all the different things, right? It's like, could they trade Ayton for something? Could they trade Chris Paul for something? And we were kind of like, yeah, it's just not going to happen. And then they get the Durant deal done. And that all I agreed with. What puzzled me, what confused me, what made me hesitate was there's just never been an NBA team that traded for a player who they made into their best player that close to the deadline or that close to the end of the season and ended up winning a championship. It just never happened. And the more that I think, now this injury being yet another chapter, the ownership stuff, Booker and Paul both having injuries, everything, it's even more unprecedented. Like, I don't know. Maybe the Raptors, the year with Kawhi, was somewhat similar just because of the trade and then his injury stuff and then all that. But I just can't really think of a team recently where there have just been so many things all happening, all so close to a season that everybody wants to result in a title. And I'm not saying it can't happen. I have no idea, but it just makes it crazier. And if I put myself in those guys' head, it just makes it a whole lot tougher to believe, to commit, to just like get the job done every night.
Yeah, I would say probably the Kawhi thing or Rashid. Detroit traded for Rashid during the trade deadline, and they won a title that year too. And it's kind of just fitting the missing piece in there. And yeah, we needed another scorer that could take over during games. And I think if you really think that was the only piece we needed from last year, and that we can still run the stuff that we run, we still have the players that we have that are pretty decent still, and the thing that we were missing was needing a bucket when things got really dry, then yeah, like, I'm really fine with still thinking we can win the whole thing. And I really still do think that was all we were missing. Like, campaign is finally getting healthier. I think Shamit's going to get some of the most open shots he's ever gotten. I can't believe I'm doing a Shamit shout out right now. And I still think like
the tables have turned. Everybody's putting that man's name out there like, oh Lord, how quickly till he can come back. And it's just hilarious to me because I feel like I was always a little bit more of a believer in that guy than most people. And now it's like, okay, he'll be our sixth man. I'm like, you guys hated him a month ago, but all right.
I think we were asking him to be a point guard, shooting guard, run the offense, just do way too much stuff, especially since he can't really dribble. And I think asking him to do literally the only thing that we want him to do would be fine. Like, I think that just we have the missing pieces and we have two scorers that can literally go off. And we're going to have one of the best centers on the floor at all times. Like, unless we're playing Jokic or Embiid, or if the Lakers ever put AD at center, like, I think we're still going to be pretty even starting five wise. And the bench is going to look better just because Monty's not going to play all 13 of these dudes anymore. It's going to be a hard 7 or like a hard 6.5. And we can be fine with that. I think that team still looks good.
Yeah. I mean, well, First of all, you can't play 6 guys for 4 rounds. So these guys, I mean, I get everybody's point. I saw that, people were kind of going that route on Twitter last night. It's like, whether we like it or not, there's going to have to be, 8 to 10 players in a lot of these games, because otherwise, if you thought Book felt tired at the end of that Bucks game on Tuesday, that'll be the norm. That's just not sustainable. But it sounds like you're more optimistic than me. I just feel like, let me put it this way. If any team like Memphis right now, right? We feel terrible about Memphis. Understandably, we're not even sure Ja Morant will play. It's a very different set of circumstances. But let's say Ja came back.
Actually, we just got it's like he just met with the commissioner and he plans to come back for the playoffs. So
so there it is. That never felt really like he was never going to come back. So all right, so that, right? It's like we're going to all go into the playoffs feeling terrible. And I'm not even like, I understand all these individual situations are very different and I'm not trying to combine stuff, but like if a team had an ownership change midseason, if a team had as many injuries as the Suns have had, if a team was even coming off of a game 7 like the Suns were, and a free agency situation with one of their core players, all these things individually, we would have kind of been like, I don't know about that team. The Suns have all of them. And so I get Kevin Durant covers up a lot. I guess the question will be how much? How much can his presence, how much can his return do to eliminate all of, like, I know it's hard, but for maybe, and I'm not saying you, Aaron, but like fans maybe listening to this are like, what does it matter? But like, think about it. It's the dudes you go to work with. It's okay. There's a new front office guy here. The team president got fired, this and that, injuries, people in and out of the lineup. Talent does a lot, but I guess I just have that question of Book has been incredible lately. We know what Durant can do. We are seeing some of the effects of guys like Paul and Ayton not being there as consistently, and that's a question. But how much can just straight talent sort of cover up? I'm not even really worried about the depth as much as I'm worried about some of those other things of just like, what does it feel like to go to work every day for these guys for a whole year of chaos? And can they flip the switch and just say, we're good enough to beat everybody, and that's all that's going to matter?
Yeah, I think that's why we have dudes that love ball for the most part. If the top of your roster just loves to hoop, I think it's a lot easier to just be like, let's go hoop then. Let's go win these 4 games. And let's go win these next 4 games. It seems like that's what KD and Book are all about. And people kind of just follow the lead on something like that when you just have the top 2 dudes on your team just being hoopers.
So you have them. You're picking them. They're winning it.
Huh?
You're picking them to win it. Then they got it.
I'm not gonna say all that, but I don't think the Suns are gonna be an easy out for anybody.
Yeah. It's a weird time in the West right now. Denver is looking very human all of a sudden. The Grizzlies are winning games when we thought they weren't, and like you just said, Ja will be back. The Kings are like the juggernaut right now. They're the only team that isn't scuttling at all, and then we'll see how all these other situations turn out. No, I'm not. I know you're not as confident as I was joking about, but it's interesting. I'm not even trying to say anything specific or make any sort of prediction out of it. It more is just to say we don't know what this is going to be like, because it just is so unprecedented, right? It's like, I'm not even going to say it's bad because I don't know that either. But it's the first time a lot of these things will have happened for a team that a lot of people will, when, ESPN NBA Countdown does some sort of segment before the Suns game 1 of the playoffs, and all of the panel says, yeah, I think the Suns are going to win the championship. It's going to be crazy that is the same team that we had so many questions about and chaos and drama about for the past calendar year. That just does not happen very often. Usually that would be the team that everybody looks at and says, the Suns could win this, and somehow the Suns aren't really the butt team right now. They're still just the lock team almost. That just doesn't feel normal to me.
Yeah, I think because we've lost some really tight, ugly games, and we still look fairly good. It's just the longevity thing. Like, once you stop, the well dries up or Book gets tired, it's kind of just done after that. But he's kept us in some stuff, and so has Payne, and so is like Ayton. Like, they've all been playing pretty well. I think if you add KD to a team that has still been fighting, regardless of being pretty much down 3 players, because like we're down pretty much everybody that we lost in the trade and the main person we got in the trade, and we're still like really fighting hard. So I think just seeing this team have its fight, even though they're extremely shorthanded, I think that kind of carries over when it's time for playoffs and you do have your star back.
I think that's absolutely fair. And tonight on Thursday, for when most folks will be finding this show, we'll probably feel a lot different. The nature of sports, right? The Magic, they're going to they should win this game. People will go into the weekend. Then they'll play the Thunder on Sunday, which is a beatable team. We'll see if they play their guys. Maybe by Monday, it's just sort of like, yeah, Suns are going to get the 4 seed again. No big deal. They're right where they want to be. I don't know. But it's going to be unprecedented, as I keep saying, no matter what. That'll wrap us up for today, though, guys. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to start your day here on this Suns game day. Hope a lot of you are going to be at this game. Maybe one of the cheaper tickets to go to. Should be a fun game. Should be a win. Get a recap show in your feed afterward by hitting follow or subscribe if you have not already. Content in your feed Monday through Friday to get locked into your favorite team. In the meantime, go make Locked On NBA your second listen today. Get caught up on all things NBA around the league. And I will talk to you guys later on Thursday.